Hi everyone, Rachel Stevens here. We are doing our multi-part series for my whole shebang Photoshop action bundle. We're going through category by category and walking through the actions. So we are going to do Haze Matte's sun and lens flares. Once you get all done with the image, then you want to get a little creative and playful with it. We have some options for you. So we're going to run the Haze Matte color palette. And it's going to render. So you can see where it ends here. Kind of like a desaturated, moody haze. So you have your black mask, your white mask, and then as you look here on opacity, you have your layers that are on 0. So that's, or turned off altogether over here. So you want to keep that in mind when something runs and then you're like, well, didn't even do anything. Just look, is the little eye on? Do you need to paint over it? So this is for rich edges, and just kind of paint over the edges a bit, kind of bring those in. A little drama. Can look here, summer, autumn, winter, and spring. Kind of feeling summer. Bring the fill down here. And then you can play around with your haze. Play around with matte. Your deepness. Your sharpness. Check your sharpness and see. You don't want it to go too crazy. This is just a high pass sharpen. It's not protecting any of your color tones. You want to make sure those values are nice and protected. And then you can go ahead and go back and forth, see where it took you. And let's delete it and keep going. So these two, you can see anything that has the shortcut key assigned, that's a personal favorite of mine, and it's in my personal recipe. So I love the soft airy matte. With these, the only thing I'll ever do is I'll go into my settings, and this point right here, I'll kind of play with, pull it down a little bit, just for a little bit more oomph. See, I love that. Let's delete that. Let's go to soft warm matte. I keep saying matte, which is funny because this model's name is Matte. Okay, anyway. Bring it down. And go back and forth and see. And we're just going to delete it and move on. We're going to do a cream matte. So you can see it's nice and subtle. Hazy Daisy. So that's a nice and subtle matte as well. It's a real hazy matte. And we've got Sunset Haze. This is where I was trying to get fancy and start naming these, you know, all crafty. And I still totally suck at it. So pardon me as I go through them, and I'm chuckling to myself at how dumb these names are. Okay, Dreamy Haze. And then you go, tone down the color. So there's little things that you can do to play around with them and adjust them to your taste. And then there's always the master opacity layer. I like that one. Okay, Cloudy Haze. It's going to render. And that's a real cloudy haze. You can kind of see the clouds in there. And we have that 70s haze, which I love. It's kind of a cross-processed haze. I actually like that a lot. It makes it look very retro. Okay, Color Stay Satin Finish. Satin Hazy Finish, pardon me. So that's preserving the color tones, but we're still getting a really cool matte and a really cool haze. So we have the matte film emulsion. This is probably, other than these two here, this one is my favorite. I really love this one. You can go in here for the silver gel. You can even turn this to soft light if you want to make it a little bit more dramatic. You can punch in here. You can make it black and white. More haze, less matte, more matte. And you can just brush over the areas you want to keep in focus. And that's totally awesome. I love that one. So if you wanted a bit more matte after you've run one of these, you can hit this and that'll give you a little bit more matte. If it just gets a little too crazy, you can always neutralize that matte down. We have our Sun Flare palette. So you can, this is going to open up the gradient fill, and then what it wants you to do, you can move around the little light. So let's see here what direction the light's going, probably over here. And then you can also double click in here, and if you wanted to change the color, you could change the color. Let's go about there. Okay. So it's going to give you a palette to choose from. You just keep clicking them to see which one you like. So you do the opacity, obviously, because that doesn't look good. So you play around with the opacity, see what you like. And there you go, that's sun flares. Now we have the lens flare palette. And as it's rendering, I'm just going to babble, I guess, about absolutely nothing for you people out there, so there's no dead silence. Because silence isn't golden on YouTube, people. Alright, so lens flares. Let's open this guy up and see what these guys did. So you can just toggle through to see what they did. That's cool. Toggling, toggling. That one's cool. So let's say we like this one. Under the smart filters, if you double click lens flare, the lens flare window is going to open up. You can move this around so that it can be directional to the way that the light is falling on your subject. So let's say you want it here instead. It'll move that light. I happen to like it where it was. And then if you wanted it to be a little bit more subtle, you can play with the opacity. And you can always go in. Yep, there we are. You can make a mask. And you can paint away like over the skin if you don't like it there. Okay. So that is our lens flare palette under our Hazes, Mattes, Sun, and Lens Flare category for our whole shebang action set. If you open up your whole shebang folder under README, right here, double click that guy, click here for all our other YouTube how-to videos, our settings, what you need to have your settings on in Photoshop for these actions to work. Here's a link to our Creative Live class. It's a 3-day course. It's a 20-hour course with lots of bonus materials, including 4 hours of me retouching from scratch, no actions. If you really want to understand what the what they are, what I'm doing, and why. Here's my post book, $5.99 on Amazon. You can get a Kindle reader for any mobile device, also for your computer. If you don't have an actual Kindle, you don't need one. Thank you so much. And please like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rachel Stevens Photography for Women. See you online.